Chadwick.
Hello, Ami. How are you?
Hi. Good, good. Am I audible?
Yes. Am I audible?
Good. Yes, very much.
Long time, Ami. Very, very long
Yeah,
time.
very, very long time. Absolutely. How are you
Ah,
doing?
I'm absolutely good. How are you?
Good, good. Great.
How
Doing
many
good.
years? How many years has it been, Ami?
So I
When were
think
we
I
working
think
in
I
Synergy? What
worked
was
with
this?
Timothy when I was 2007, 6 and 7.
2006 or 7? That's when we were in Synergy, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think,
Been
yeah,
a very,
yeah. I
very long
remember
time.
you went to marketing and yeah. It's been a long time. Yeah. So good to see you after such a long time.
Yes,
And
absolutely, absolutely. And
yeah.
thanks for accepting. I really appreciate that. We've got a couple of people with us already, so I think we shouldn't wait. We start, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Great. I mean, so you first, if you can tell our audience a little about yourself, who you are, what you do. We start with that.
So yeah. My name is Ami Wade, and I'm into the field of learning and development for 19 years now. It all started with BPO industry. I got into voice and accent training, and then from BPO, actually, it started with sales and marketing and DSAs, banking, BFSI sector, to call centers and call centers to training. I think I did training till 2008. Then I moved to China. I have been teaching English as a foreign language in China. I've also worked as a director in a foreign teaching institute where I would train a lot of foreign interns who would like to work in China. And it's been since 2017, I moved back to India, and I have my own company called Speak with Ami. We do a lot of soft skills and behavioral skills program, mainly into the area of communication, because I think communication is something which is very much towards my core, and that is where the entire life of my journey was built. From the time I was taking calls to the client that I would pitch, to the training that I do today and the public speaking. Yeah. Apart from that, I've been LinkedIn Top Voice this year, and also received Women's Achievers Award and a couple of things going in, but it's going good. Yeah.
Very good. Very nice to hear. So besides the China thing, I think I can just cut copy paste from what you said. So I started almost
Okay.
similar, right? ESAs, PFSI. Actually, there was one addition there. I'm a hotel management student, so I worked in that industry for about a year. But then DSAs happened, and then the BPO happened. And,
Okay.
but while training was always a part of something that I did, my core shifted towards operations more than training. Um, so I did a lot of operations, 20 to 23 odd years, BPO operations, all
Mm-hmm.
shifts, India, US, UK, Australia, I did it all. Um, uh, so yeah, so training's always been a part of it, and I like doing training. I like when I have um, more than training. It's actually recent development is hosting. So I've been doing a couple of corporate hosting. I hosted TEDx in Goa very recently, and
Okay.
that was an amazing experience. Very comfortable with the mic in my hand, audience in front. That's more or less like what I like, and like you said, and that's probably one of the reasons why the two of us are very close to the topic of communication, because we're
Yeah.
always talking, we're always, in simple words, we're always communicating in some way or the other. um
I remember, I just remember something about you that as a training organization that we worked for, there were times when, we had no trainers, and I know Yakuta would say, Stedwick, just go and do that program. So I remember you doing that because, we all would be hyper and, get mad. And yeah, I remember that time.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
so we
yeah.
were we were
Yeah.
we were two of us who would do something just like that. I don't know if you remember Viraf. It was Viraf and me who would not be ready for trainings, but because we didn't have trainers.
Same,
One of the first times I did something like with that was this Dhirubhai Ambani pioneer of DAPO, where we were running short of trainers and we needed people to teach people English to speak. It was in Kopar,
Oh,
Chennai,
okay.
India,
Okay.
Dhirubhai Ambani Pioneer
Okay.
Knowledge City. That was the
Okay.
first time that Preeti said,
Very nice.
"No trainers,
Yeah.
please go."
Go.
So, but it was fun.
Yeah.
A lot of learning.
Yeah,
It's
good
been a
one.
long
A
journey.
lot of learning. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, let's just start. So I'm going to start with something that one of the reasons why I kind of picked communication and I picked you for it, because currently I'm part of a human resource company in Goa called Engage HR. So we do everything from recruitment to learning and development to HR payroll, staffing, stuff like that. One of the things that we have in almost all of our recruiter feedback forms that we fill when we do, and one of the things there is communication. Um, but I think there during interviews, communication is actually just taken as language. Just you don't do you don't rate anything else other than just language. I want to know from you, because communication is your center point with what you're training. How would you break down communication? Not only from recruitment, but how would you break down communication? What's the best way to explain it?
That's a very good question, a very valid question you've been asking. Actually, if we go to see communication itself is a big umbrella. But when we are brought up, when we are in schools and colleges and language becomes our main mode, English, or if you're convent, I was in a convent school and I know how importance of English or a language in communication goes in. As and when we grow or we move ahead, the main area, communication is definitely a language and it's a foundation, but what happens is lot of other elements from the time you leave your school, college, and you jump to work, the first interview you give to wherever you're working. The first element I would say is your non-verbal skills, which is your body language. So there are a couple of elements I'll talk about, but from language, body language is very important part, like we talk about Mehrabian's principle or whatever you can say. But even if we are not communicating, we are communicating. Our cameras is on, it's off. It's about your facial expressions, your eye contact, your non-verbal cues, or, all these things, they really matter a lot. And it's not just words or the language that we speak. The other element I would say active listening. So listening as in not just listening, not just responding to something, but being mindful of what you are saying. And when we say mindful, the third element would be emotional intelligence. It's all what communication is all about. Consciously communicating what you want to say rather than just saying, or, your mind is talking to you something and then you react, you just bring out something. So consciously communicating, again, it's a very, very important element. Clarity, conciseness, the way you are adaptable as a leader, the adaptability skills, and I would say there's one more element, giving and receiving feedback. So giving and receiving feedback, because the way you say, but the way you get response to how you react, everything. But language is one element, but more than language, even today's world, if you see, we talk a lot about language and it's extremely important, and a lot of students and people come to me with MTI or problems. But more than that, before you work on their language skills, it's a mindset that you work on. And, so mindful communication, conscious communication, and then your body language. So, yeah, it's all important.
I completely agree with everything that you said right here. And since the topic of today is communication and art at workplace, I think I'm going to pick on those two things that you spoke about: conscious, mindful communication as a leader, your first interview, feedback. I think I'm going to couple all of these and make my next question out of that. One of the places that leaders have issues with communication is when I've been a leader all my life, and I don't know if I want to say that I was born a leader. I think it took a lot of work to put together to reach a point where you say, I can now confidently manage a team. But conflict at work is something you cannot not have it. When there are two different people, they're two different egos, they're two different mindsets. If they work together, it's harmony, but there are ought to be clashes, and that's when conflict comes. Conflict management is all about communication. My question to you, I'm trying to get out a question, is when a leader needs to communicate something to one, two, or many of his team members about something that isn't comfortable to talk. If I want to say, if I want to tell someone in my team that I don't like something the way they do or the way they say, what's the best way to communicate something uncomfortable?
Valid question, and it's happening everywhere. Every leader is going through this. All the inquiries
Every
I
day.
get is on conflict. I just did a Friday, I did a session with very senior management leaders of a company on conflict. Again, that was a US recruitment firm, and this was a main challenge. I would say one very important aspect here is respond with empathy. So empathizing the way you are making your statements. Now, empathy is a word where we talk about being into someone's shoes, or, not sympathizing, but really, really understanding the other person's situation. You need to be very patient to have that kind of an empathy. At the same time, using I statements. So when you say, okay, I am concerned, okay, I understand how you feel. Or if there is certain task which is not done and you are worried about it, rather than just blaming somebody and you have to get it done and what is happening or what's going wrong, you could just say something like, I feel concerned with the deadline. There are some important aspects. So, empathy is very important. Apart from that, even talking to people, not at work times, but after or before working hours or in between the coffee breaks, the way you put or frame your sentences. So that's one way I think a lot of conflict can be resolved, or at least the opposite person can understand, okay, this is what happened and, this is what I can work on, this particular. So empathy, at the same time, sometimes our language should be very specific and subject oriented. We as leaders want to get things done and want to really work on a topic, but if we are not very, very specific, or you could repeat or reframe that sentence, because what happens is a lot of times employees would just be like, yes, even if some work is given, there is not active or a mindful listening, and they would say yes. So maybe asking that question, taking that effort and asking again, reframing, rather than just later on, working on it and the task is not done and there is a huge conflict happens. So these are some things I think can really work on. And I said, I think choose the right time and the place to talk to somebody. Don't just put it across in front of anyone and everyone. So this is one thing which worked. So I realized this during my days in China, when suddenly, from being an English teacher, I was promoted as a director to foreign teaching team. And I'll just giving you an example here. And I had a team of British interns. Now, these are young Britishers. China is a little racist, so, when you are Indian and then they are reporting to you, there is a conflict. There is the way you are speaking, there's a conflict. And then there is a young crowd who is really, really, and it was the first time I actually, understood what is it to be a leader. And I want to be good because they are working for me. If they don't come to work tomorrow, the whole business, everything is going to be affected. What do I do? And the culture, okay? So the culture here was a big barrier. Again, there is Chinese, there is Indian, and there is the British. So for me, what worked is, again, choosing the right time and the right place to speak, putting yourself in that other person's shoe, because his way of looking and doing things is absolutely different than your style of working. So that's the first, I think I did take some steps and it did help me. So yeah, I would say that.
I think this is beautifully come out. So let me paraphrase this. You said empathy. You said use the I statement. So put yourself in that position. I think that's beautiful, because when you put yourself in that position, you're telling that person, I understand. To some level, I agree. I feel you, right? And then another very, very important thing, which is be very specific. I think that works everywhere, right? Whether it is business, whether it is communication and relationships, communication at work. If you're not specific, you're just going around the bush, you're not getting to the point. So I agree, being specific. And I think one very beautiful thing that's come out of here is that communication is not only about verbal, non-verbal, physical, but it also involves the environment and the atmosphere around. Because like you said, choose the right place, choose the right place, choose the right time. You don't want to tell someone that you don't like something about them in front of other people. Maybe that's just not the right setup. So if people are not people, if listeners here, this is for you. If you've not been thinking about the surrounding as a part of communication, you've been missing out, because what you say, how you say, is as important as where you say it. So I think that's something very beautiful that's come out of this answer. So, I mean, thank you so much for that.
And it's like, just add something to it. So from the time we are born, or a child is born, his environment is where he communicates, right? So environment is everywhere. It's just that when we go to work, we forget that there is something called as environment, and we just take it as those typical words into communications which are there. But environment is everything, because a lot of stories built on that. Your environment changes, your communication changes. As simple as that.
100%. And so I'm adding a new thing. In communication training, we always say it's not about how you say, it's not about what you say, but how you say it. So but with years going by, it's how, it's what, and now it's where as well, and when. So I think all of these things put together. If you miss even one of these, you could be saying something that you don't really want to say. So I completely agree. I mean, I'm going to change the question a little from workplace to something a little different. I have a lot of the followers here who are young college students. One of the reasons that's happened is very recently I did a small little talk on entrepreneurship, and a lot of the followers here come from that college that I went to. A lot of the viewers here, I mean. So the question is mainly to get the answer for them, which is they're at that cusp where they're just about going to get out of TY, SY moving to TY most importantly moving out, and they're going to get their first jobs. Communication for them is going to take a swing, because it's very different from how you communicate with your professors, with your friends, who you can call colleagues at work, at college. And it's very different when you communicate with your boss or with your colleagues at work. What would be your advice to these young people? How do they prepare themselves in the lines of communication? Get ready to go to office. My first job, my first boss, my first end of day report. How do I prepare for this?
Good question asked. I think a lot of my training career started from here. When I started my training career in Synergy, I was as young as graduate, BPO, and marketing, and then training. And I still remember that time. And this is a big problem with a lot of students because they join, but they even trained into campus to corporate. I do a lot of campus to corporate workshops, but then there are certain elements that they really miss on. Firstly, I would say observe and adapt. So when you're new in any company or a new organization that you join, you observe what's happening. Who are those experienced colleagues, or those colleagues who are really making an impact? So they talk to you, they don't talk to you, you are shy, you are introvert, or you are extrovert. You observe, adapt, and then you take some strategies and have your own style. So the first thing I would say. Second is seek feedback. So if you have a senior, or if you have some colleagues who is helping you, even if you're making that first sales call, or you're doing marketing, because I come from a lot of marketing background, that's why I'm giving this example, or anything that you do, seek feedback. Definitely don't hesitate to ask for any kind of feedback rather than just going blankly and just saying yes. So what happens with these generations, especially in my times when we started, we did not have Instagram. We did not have, so much of Facebook or chat, GTP, or whatever we call about. We did not have social media. So we
Yes.
would still observe. So right now what happens is, even if you're joining a job, you're first day you're new and then you're messaging, it's my first day, or you're doing something, so observing and adapting is extremely important. Seeking feedback, rather than just going and saying, yes, I know, I can do it. And, you just say yes, 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 but actually there is no yes here. Clear and concise message. Be very, very particular about what is it that you are communicating and the message you are. And a lot of students hesitate in asking open-ended questions. Why, what, where? If you're not understanding, ask again. So I was doing training for one of the diamond designing companies. And is it okay if I take examples? Because I think
Of course,
yeah,
examples work the best.
One big challenge there would be where the boss is asking a couple of things, and and the new joinees, and a lot of job roles would change. Okay, so today you're doing marketing, and then you're doing designing, and then you're doing some other role. They would just say yes to everything. But at least ask, why is it done? If you're not understanding and if you're not asking, if you're a student, how do you expect to get that project done? And then there will be a complaint from a foreign client that this is not the design that I wanted. So be clear and concise when you're writing a report, sending that email. Be clear and be to the point. Another is related to that same: deep active listening. Deep active listening. And deep active listening, one of the big reasons is social media. It doesn't work. So yeah. So that's what I can say, because I even tell my students to be more active on. Fine, you definitely need to be active on things like LinkedIn or any social media. But when you're working, you're working. And confidence is a matter of practice. It comes with preparation. So when you are nervous too, you are confident. It's all about practice. It's like practicing public speaking, practicing a sales pitch, to going and taking those small, tiny steps. So yeah, that's one important thing.
Well said. So for all those viewers here today, listeners here today, I'm going to paraphrase again this answer that she just gave. The first thing, and I think it's beautifully said, your first job, your first boss, what you want to do instead of just simply saying yes is observe. I think that's a super powerful word being used by Ami here. You observe who are the people, because everyone reacts and everyone works differently. If you want help, who do you go to? Who's easily approachable? Who answers better? Who do you like to work with? Observing, I think, is super, super important. And even though it's not a part of direct communication, you just realized if you're not observing, you're not going to be able to communicate. So now it's become a moving part there, right? So ask feedback. We don't ask for feedback. We wait for feedback. And I think that's where we go wrong. The Bible says, ask and you shall receive. So whatever it is that you want, you ask. And if you don't ask for feedback, you don't know as a new person whether what you're doing is being accepted, or, well, they're just taking it as, theek hai yaar, naya hai, seekh lega. But that's probably what you don't want to get into. So ask why, what, where do I get this? Why should I do this, or how do I do this? I think those are very, very important points being made by Ami today. And the most important, which is a part of what happened in the second question also, which is clear and concise, be specific. I think that's the name of the game. Being specific in everything that you do is super, super important. I mean, well said. Thank you very much. We've got a few things here. I mean, we've got body language. We've got not only how, what, but also where and when. We've got observe. We've got ask for feedback. We've got be clear and concise. Would you agree these are all moving parts of communication? Are there anything else that you'd add?
Absolutely. Yeah. These are moving parts of communication. Absolutely.
So, I mean, when we say, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, because the very common thing of people, saying, in human resource, for example, every time I get a JD from a client, the client says, this person must be really good in communication. And the question that remains unanswered is, when you say communication, are you just saying language, or are you saying a lot more? He's obviously saying a lot more. They're obviously always saying a lot more. And that boils down, and I've understood that over the years, that boils down when they're saying, I want someone who's good in communication. What they're actually talking or actually saying, under the line of actually saying, what they mean is, we want someone who fits our culture. And if you fit in the culture, then you're communicating correctly. Because if this is a company which has a lot of, let's just say, senior people, and then there is someone very new and very young coming in. Again, you've given examples. I've given an example. I worked in a company called Delta Services, which was a part of 3i Infotech. And I was the youngest assistant manager in the team. So when we sat for monthly reviews, I was 28 and there was no one below 36. There was everyone at 36 and above. So I had a good nearly 8 years of gap, almost a decade, almost a different generation sitting on the table, and I was the youngest. Every time I would say something, I could sense that they think that what they were thinking, that ये तो बच्चा है यार, ये तो अभी start किया है, हमें क्या बोलेगा, हमें क्या सिखाएगा. So I think it becomes super important that you're deciding what to say, how to say, when, where to say, and all of these moving parts of communication is very, very important. So for young leaders, for the young students who are here, all of these parts are moving parts of communication, which very few colleges, training institutions will ever teach you. This is something that you can pick from experienced people like Ami, who are talking to corporates, who are talking to people of your age. So go look out for someone who can teach you. These are moving parts which don't come out in books. They don't come out in theory, right? It is something that we learn through experience. Ami, would you like to add any other moving part which we haven't spoken today?
We've covered it all. It starts with language, non-verbal listening. The context setting, I said, the feedback, emotional intelligence, clarity, brevity. And something I've learned in NLP, we started with language, right? We all start with language. And I don't know, I still remember one of my NLP teachers, Anil Thomas, he would say, in Hindi, bhasha badalne se anubhav badalta hai. So even when your language is there, if you change your language, your styling of language, again, it goes back to your empathy statements or whatever you are speaking, your entire experience will change. For example, if you're doing the same interview in Hindi, it would sound very different than we are speaking in English. So even if that is needed, to changing that environment, you change the language according to the situation, it would work like anything, because especially for students, because we do a very, very nice activity in training where we ask students to become kids and talk, and then become adult and talk, and then become a teenager and talk, teenager, adult, and old, and the entire conversation flourishes. It's different, right? So the time, situation, your entire language will change according to the situation. The experience of the language will change. So yeah, that's one sentence to remember if you understand Hindi, everyone. Change your language, your entire experience will change. Bhasha badalne se anubhav badalta hai. Yeah.
We're going to hold on to that, and we're going to make that the last statement of the day, which is bhasha badalne se anubhav badalta hai. Wonderfully said. Your NLP trainer was absolutely on dot. Ami, thank you so much for accepting to be a part of this today. You got loads of stuff that we can take back with us in communication. So many moving parts that we do not look at on a daily basis, whether at work or whether at home or whether with friends, who you're talking to, what, when, how, why, all of those. So many moving parts. I mean, thank you so much for being a part of this. We appreciate all the listeners, I'm sure here, appreciate all of the information you've given us. If anybody wants to reach out to Ami, she said it's Speak with Ami, and you can find her on Instagram with that. And if you want to reach me, mine's Engage HR, and that's the name of the company that I work with. Thank you guys for being a part of this. Appreciate your presence. Ami, thank you so much for being here. And we will keep in touch.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Yeah.